I don't know about you, but we love to travel. We used to hate coming back from vacations and settling back into our routine. So we made a decision in 2020 that we would travel full time. And here are the things we did to make this happen. And what we're also going to share with you in this video today is our year 2024 in review. So follow us now for a tour.
Taking my chances along with my dreams.
If you are new to our channel, let me tell you, in 2020 when COVID hit, we canceled all our travel plans, probably like everybody else did. And my hubby had owned RVs and RV'd before, and he said if there was ever a time to do this again, this would be the time because we can travel safely, social distancing. So that's what we did. We bought an RV, we sold our home, and we hit the road. And we've been on the road 4 years now. We travel full time, but we slow travel. So if you follow my travels, you know I work full time, and you have to work remotely to make this lifestyle happen or be retired. My hubby's semi-retired. And what he does, he also does remotely. So we both work remotely from the RV, which allows us to, work and travel everywhere. Besides full-time RV, and we also park up the RV in the winter, and we travel to the Caribbean and spend some time out to the country as well, and other countries. But what I wanted to share with you today into this video is our year in review, like 2024, and how much it costs to like live on the road full time. Because a lot of people will say is like, how do you afford to do that? Well, wherever you live, you have to pay for, right? And our home state is Florida, which is one of the most expensive states to live into actually. So if we live in Florida or we spend the summers in other states, it balances out because we don't have a brick and mortar home back, here into Florida. So wherever we park our RV, we pay rent, we keep the RV parks in balance. We have a membership. We also stay in state parks and parks that are less expensive, so it balances out the rent. But no matter where you live, you either pay mortgage or rent or something. And as far as living food and stuff like that, we have discovered, that's much less expensive in other states. So now we have a balance of coming back to Florida or traveling to the Caribbean in the winter and spending the summers on the road, traveling to states we haven't been before. And mainly we do it in the summer to get rid of the heat in Florida, because the heat is intense in Florida, and living in an RV, when it's hot outside, it's really, really hot. When it's cold outside, it's really chilly inside the RV as well. So we started 2024 with a New Year's Eve party at the Elks Club with our friends. Now we joined the Elks Club because if you are an Elk member, you can park your RV on Elks properties all over the country. Many of them have hookups, some of them don't. But if you are a member, you can park your RV at Elks Club, and you can also eat, dine and drink at a bar at the Elks Club. The prices are really, really good. So we highly recommend, if you are an RVer, to consider becoming an Elk member if you're not already. And even if you're not an RVer, it's a really, really good association. They do really, really good work. And what drew me in is all the donations they do towards scholarships for students. So it's a really, really good organization. So that's where we started our New Year's. We went into 2024 celebrating with our friends at the Elks Club, and it was great. Shortly after that, on to January 6th, we parked up our RV in storage and we headed to Saba. If you follow my travels, you'll know that I am from Saba, the smallest but the tallest peak of the Dutch kingdom. I moved to this country 20 years ago, but now my son and his family lives back there. I have sisters there, so I always go back to spend time with my family. And plus, I love spending time on my little island as well. And now my honey, he's fallen in love with it as well. So as soon as we got there, I actually got sick. I got like a flu that was going around. So we had booked for a month, and probably like on the second day, I'm like, yeah, if I'm going to be sick for a couple of weeks, I'm going to have to extend this trip. So we actually stayed for 6 weeks. But our last week we spent into St. Maarten, also a favorite. And I always go to St. Maarten on the way back home because we have a tiny airport in Saba. In fact, if you Google the smallest commercial runway in the world, our little airport in Saba will come up. But very often when the winds are crossed, we have no flights coming in. So if I'm going to stay in St. Maarten, I always plan it on my way back to America so that if there's no flights coming into Saba, I'm already in St. Maarten because the jets come into St. Maarten. It's very seldom that flights out to St. Maarten is canceled unless there's a storm. And we really enjoy spending time in St. Maarten as well. We love the beaches and the water, and we have our favorite Simpson Bay Marina Resort where we stay. It's a little city in itself. So that is what we did to kick off our year. Now, we didn't plan anything into March because when you travel full time, you do need time to catch up onto like doctor's appointments and stuff like that. So we had scheduled some appointments when we came back from the Caribbean. We scheduled these in March. So we stayed the month of March into Florida, our home base, and took care of our health and self-care, because if you're not healthy, you can't enjoy life, right? Because it doesn't matter how much money you have or anything. Health is the number one thing, because without good health, you are nowhere. You can make money, you can do all kinds of things, but you need to work on your health and try and stay healthy as good as you can, because that is the number one thing in life. So that's what we did in March. Not interesting, but must be done. Now, April was a really, really special month because my stepson, Charles's son, got married into April on a cruise ship, and there were, I want to say, like a group of 80 of their friends and family, and his wife has worked for celebrity for 20 years. So this was like a super special wedding cruise because it was on one of her celebrity ships. It was absolutely amazing. The ceremony was actually in St. Thomas, so it was a real Caribbean wedding, and we got to stop in the Caribbean islands. We had such an amazing time. We made new friends. I think everybody made new friends onto the ship. I mean, cruising and partying with a group of 80 people, you can just imagine what an amazing cruise that was. The wedding was absolutely beautiful. And we cruised into St. Maarten. Now, I fly to St. Maarten to get back to my island. I don't know how many times in my lifetime. I even lived in St. Maarten for 6 years. But it was the first time I went into St. Maarten on a cruise. So this was also like a super special experience for me as well. And as we go through our year in review, here came May. So we spent some time into Port St. Lucie. And right at Mother's Day, I spent Mother's Day with my son Raphael here in Port St. Lucie. And then the next day we went to Orlando to spend Mother's Day with my mother-in-law, my hubby's mom. And that was really, really special. We spent 2 weeks into the Orlando area so that we could spend time with her. We always stay into a RV park in Claremont. We have a 1,000 Trail membership, and they have Clearbrook Golf Resort right on the golf course. My hubby loves it there. It's a huge park, so we usually stay there on our way to and from Port St. Lucie. And if you saw my video last week, you will know that our year started off sad because my mother-in-law passed away on January 2nd. So the time we spent with her was always priceless now. And we really, really enjoy the time we spend there. When we left the Orlando area, we headed up to Destin. Destin was going to be our first stop. We booked 4 nights into Destin. And when we got there, we were staying in this park, 30A. There was a free shuttle going down to the beach. I think the very first night we went down, we took the shuttle down to the beach and we watched the sunset and we were like, oh my gosh, this is absolutely amazing. Maybe we could find out how much it is to stay like a week. So we did. We extended it for a week. And that week went by so quickly that we found out what the monthly rate was and we decided to stay for the month. And it was such a wonderful month, spending just visiting all the coastal towns into that area in the Panhandle. I mean, we stayed just outside of Destin and we stayed in the 30A area. And it was just amazing. All the seafood. We would go to this little restaurant where we made friends with the bartenders. They are all young people, good energy. They remembered us when we went back. We had so much fun. It was such a small town vibe. So we always say, you hear me saying, we have a plan without a plan. Excuse me. And yes, we do in situations like this. Because if we had booked ahead of Destin, we would have missed out onto this, right? And then the bad thing is that when we were traveling through the summer, they got, hit by a hurricane and so much damage. And so I'm so thankful and blessed that we spend that time in the Destin area. I had been watching videos forever on Crab Island, and I've been wanting to go to Crab Island because it looks so beautiful. It looked like the Caribbean. And that was one thing I checked off my bucket list, was spending the day in Crab Island. It was absolutely beautiful. And although into Port St. Lucie we live about 15 minutes from the beach, the beaches and the ocean here is different than in the Panhandle. In the Panhandle, it reminds me a little bit more of the Caribbean. The water, it's not on the Atlantic, it's the Gulf. It's more flat, the water, and the color is clear, it's beautiful. The beaches, the first time I went to Destin, I was so impressed how clean the beach was, because the first time I went to Destin, we were living on Hollywood Beach, and I used to collect garbage. In the 3 years I lived there, I picked up I don't know how many 100 pounds of garbage that would wash in from the Atlantic on the beach. So when I went to Destin, that was my first thing that I noticed, was how clean the beach was. There was only water and sand. I mean, there was no garbage, no bottle caps. It was absolutely amazing. So yes, that ranks really high up onto our list of favorites, is the Destin area. So we spent a month there, the whole month of June, and we left and we headed up to, our mission was to go to Mackinac Island for my honey's birthday, which was July 11th. So we booked in that area, but we only stopped along the way driving up. So when we left the Destin area, we went up to Alabama. We just spent 2 nights there just to rest from the drive. And then we went up to Kentucky. We spent 2 nights there. And then we went up to Indiana. Now I do have to take out my map because I forget which state, comes next. And I do have notes that's blown all over the place. But we went up to Indiana. And sometimes it's not the towns you stop into, but it's the RV park or the people. We stopped into this RV park that was into this little town, Pendleton. And this was such a cool place because of the owners. I walked into the office to check in and they were playing reggae music. Yep, that was the first thing. That was a good check coming from the Caribbean. And I got talking to them. They had recently bought it and they were bending over backwards to help everybody and make this experience so special. It was such a family campground where they had activities all the time and games. And if you know me, I'm a real people person and a community person. I can't live anywhere by myself. I love RV parks and communities because I love to connect with people. So we had such a good time staying in this park and exploring the little town, Pendleton. This was such a cute little town. We enjoyed it. We found some good restaurants, and so we really had a good time. And we didn't even like, this was not on our list, you know, to stay at. So we continued up through Indiana and on into Michigan. We made a few stops along the way into Michigan, just like a few, you know, nights, like one night, 2 nights at a time, because our mission was to go up to Mackinac Island. So originally my honey tried to find a park in Mackinac City, not to have to take the RV over the bridge, but the RV park was full. So he found a park into St. Ignace. We had never heard of this town before, but it was in the Upper Peninsula, and we had to drive with an RV over the mighty Mackinac Bridge. Now, for my honey, this was a really intense drive, a 6-mile bridge up super high because big container ships pass under this bridge. It's only 2 lanes. 1 lane was closed, and 1 lane is like metal grids. So when he was looking at videos, it said stay in the right lane because you don't want to drive over this metal grid. Right lane was closed. We end up being in this lane, but it was really a super exciting experience as well, going over this mighty bridge. So, and thankfully it wasn't windy, because when it's windy they shut down the bridge. So the day before we left, it was windy, and we were so worried, you know, concerned that if it got worse, we would have to stay longer or whatever, because there was no other way out. But we were lucky, fortunate, and we got out without a problem. But while we were staying in St. Ignace, we spent the day in Mackinac Island, and Mackinac Island was definitely on our bucket list. We celebrated my honey's birthday there, and we had an amazing time. So when we got off the boat, and he said we should take a taxi around the island, because everybody told us rent a bicycle and ride a bike around the island. I can't ride a bicycle. I never rode a bicycle when I was young, but I saw everybody on their bikes riding around Mackinac Island. When we started this journey, my honey did buy 2 bikes. They were really nice, big electric bikes, but I was intimidated. I tried it a few times. I was wobbly. I felt like I was going to fall, and we left them in Port St. Lucie. But after visiting Mackinac Island, I was inspired to learn to ride a bike. So I bought myself a small electric bike. And when we were in New York, we stayed in this park on the end of a peninsula with this road that I tried all day long until I felt, you know, stable and confident. And now I know how to ride a bike. And this was inspired by visiting Mackinac Island, because I thought in our travels, we could ride bikes, and, you know, my honey and I can explore more when there's a lot of traffic and in cities. So now I'm happy that I can ride a bike. But when we got off the ferry in Mackinac Island, and he said we should take a taxi, I thought there were no cars on the island. Yes, you heard that right. There's no cars on Mackinac Island. So the taxi was a horse-drawn carriage, and we did that. We hired a taxi, a horse-drawn carriage, and we did a tour around Mackinac Island. It was beautiful. And the good part is that, you know, he told us all the history of the island, the driver. So we have a video just onto Mackinac Island, and we had an amazing day. What we also did when we were in the Upper Peninsula, we went to Tequamanon Falls. Now, it took me days of practicing to even pronounce that word, but that is so worth the visit. I think it was like maybe an hour and a half drive from the campground that we stayed, but so worth it. It's like the biggest fall outside of Niagara Falls, so it's really worth visiting. It was absolutely beautiful. So after spending some time into Michigan, we actually headed back down, because our next hard stop was going to be Buffalo. We were going to spend 2 weeks into Buffalo. This we knew because we wanted to explore Niagara Falls, so we knew this. So we only booked like stops along the way as we came down through the Great Lakes, and we did get to experience 4 of the Great Lakes. We went to Lake Michigan. We spent the day onto the beach into Lake Michigan. I was amazed how beautiful the beach was. I didn't expect a beach on a lake to be like that. It reminded me of, the beaches into Destin. The water was crystal clear, all the ripples into the sand. It was so pretty. Yes, it was cold, but I would have gone in if I had my swimsuit because, there were other people swimming, so I always like to try new things. So the beaches were beautiful. We stayed right onto Lake Huron. And then we also stayed on to Lake Erie, so we got to visit several of the Great Lakes, because as we trekked around coming back south around Michigan, we stayed in Ohio for a few nights. We discovered this place, Sandusky. Had never heard about it before, but we met people along the way that also, gave us recommendations, and this was a cute town we explored. And then we thought we would be staying into Pennsylvania in this little town, but it turned out to be on the border of like Ohio and Pennsylvania. And this little town was so cute. It was called Geneva on the Lake. Yeah, Geneva onto the lake. It's only open into the summer. You can imagine onto the lake like that. It gets really cold in the winter. But it's a real touristy town. There were little shops and restaurants lining the streets. And we only booked to stay there one night as an overnight, heading up on our way up to Buffalo. But when we drove through the town, we got to the RV park and we unhooked and went to explore the town. Such a cute town. I mean, we had never heard of this place. So slow traveling, we go through all these and explore and discover all these little places that we've never heard of before. And now it's on our list. We would love to go back and spend a little more time on Geneva onto the lake, because that was such a good find. We had dinner at a restaurant that not only was the food amazing, but the service was super, super special. So this is what we love about RV life, is discovering, all these places. So our next stop, we were into Buffalo around the last 2 weeks of July, beginning of August. One of the other reasons we planned and we booked to stay into Buffalo for 2 weeks, because you need a break when you RVing all the time like this. My honey has to take a break from driving. It's super stressful, driving every day for hours and hours, this big rig, towing the Jeep. So we thought 2 weeks would give him a good break from the driving. And I planned to fly down to Orlando to meet my son and his family, because they were coming up to Orlando for vacation in the summer. And I was feeling sad. I was so far away. So we did that. We found a good park, good price for 2 weeks, and we stayed there, took a break. I flew down for a long weekend. And the biggest thing we did into Buffalo was explore Niagara. Niagara was absolutely amazing. And we have videos, from the American side and the Canadian side. We did both. My brother and his wife came up, and we stayed into Buffalo, in the city of Buffalo. We explored that city with them. He booked a hotel, we stayed there, and then we went to Toronto, spent a night into Toronto. In fact, the same day we went was, I want to say it's Caribou, the festival that they have. It's the biggest Caribbean festival outside of the Caribbean, and it was such a coincidence. It was the one day that we chose to go to Toronto. So that was a super cool experience staying there. So when we left Buffalo, we headed through New York, because when I think of New York, I used to only think in New York City, because that's the only place I have been. But New York is huge. So starting off on the upstate side, we had to go through, the widest part of New York. So on our way, we stopped into Lake George. That was another hot spot. Lake George is beautiful. If you haven't visited before, you should add it to your list. Now, Unfortunately, when we were in Lake George, a tropical storm passed through there. I couldn't believe that far north, but tropical storm Debbie like came up and went right through Lake George. So we were housebound. We were RV bound for a day because of the rain. The place was like flooding and so, but dang, only now it's storming. It's flooding in front of us. Whoa, I was hoping the worst was over, but I guess it's still coming. As it came, it went, and the weather was fine after that. So, you know, we got a few days of exploring Lake George. It's so pretty. I highly recommend, and we would really like to go back there. We stayed in this really nice RV park. We loved the family, you know, who ran the RV park. But we had booked things ahead, so we couldn't stay longer, although the storm was passing. We left Lake George and we tracked up. Our next main track was up to Maine. Our main track was up to Maine. So we were going up to Acadia, but we stopped a night into Vermont on the way up. We didn't overnight into New Hampshire, but we did visit New Hampshire after. But we stayed up in Acadia Park. We had booked for 4 nights at Thousand Trails, and we extended it for a week, and that was beautiful. Oh my gosh, I loved Maine. Now, one of the big reasons I like Maine is because of the seafood and the lobster. I had never had Maine lobster until I was in Maine. I'd always had Caribbean lobster. I love the Maine lobster as well. I love my Caribbean lobster, but I love the claws on the Maine lobsters. So I truly enjoyed the food. All the seafood in Maine was absolutely amazing. After Acadia National Park, we tracked our way down and we went through the seaside towns along like Kennebunkport, and I can't even remember them all as we came down, but we met up with a cousin who I hadn't seen in like over 30 years. After exploring Maine, we worked our way down to Boston. And Boston area is where I spend my birthday month. And it wasn't just any birthday, it was my big 60th birthday. So it was really, really a special celebration. And this is why we couldn't stay longer in Lake George, because my honey had booked this destination because my sister came up to visit and 2 of our friends met up with us. So we had a place in Plymouth and we needed to be there for that time because they had booked as well. So that's why we couldn't stay longer in other places. But we had an amazing time exploring Massachusetts. We went whale watching, that was for my birthday. It was such an emotional experience. Oh my God, I can like just feel that feeling now when that whale came up next to the boat. It melted my heart. So these are the things that, you know, with slow traveling and RV life, we get to experience. You know, we were staying in a park that was maybe like $50 a night or something, and we got to explore a new state. So we absolutely love this lifestyle. And I'm going to tell you approximately how much like a 6-month road trip cost us, just so that you have an idea. So when we left the Boston area, we went on to Connecticut. I had never been to Connecticut before. We spent the day into Rhode Island, and then we went to Connecticut. We stayed in this family-run park, Brierley Park. It was really, really nice. We met people who lived there in the summer and live in Florida into the winter. We really enjoyed exploring Connecticut. We spent a day at the casino, the Mohegan Sun, I want to say it is. Most people knew of it before we went there. We're not gamblers. I had never heard of it before, but it's a beautiful casino. If you like to gamble, we recommend you go there. They had a lot of nice restaurants, and we enjoyed Connecticut. From Connecticut, we head down to New York because my hubby's daughter and family lives in New Jersey, and we wanted to camp out with the grandkids, but we couldn't find a place into New Jersey any closer than this. This was about 40 minutes away, but it was Croton-on-the-Hudson in New York, and it was a state park. We stayed there for five weeks because it was only like $900 a month. Now, you can't find a place to rent for $900 a month. So that was such a good price, and it was a good park. It was a huge park, state park, onto this peninsula into the Hudson. So we were surrounded by water. I mean, I could walk trails all over the place. And the special thing about being in that park is that our grandkids could come from New Jersey and camp with us. So that was, they spend a few weekends with us. We would just drive into New Jersey and spend time with them. So that was a wonderful, wonderful 5 weeks that we spent there. And the second special thing was that we went from summer to fall into this park. We got there into September and we left like the 21st of October. And we saw the leaves going from green to yellow to red to just cascading down when it was windy. Oh my gosh, that was so beautiful. If you haven't spent time into like a fall place up north, I highly recommend you do that, because that was such a beautiful experience. I can close my eyes and see it and feel it right now. But we left Florida chasing cooler weather, and now it was getting cold into New York. In fact, some days I had dropped, it was into the 30s, and so we had the heat on into the RV because it gets pretty cold inside the RV. And we were parked under trees into the state park, so yeah, it was pretty chilly and there. So now it was time to head back south to Florida and chase warmer weather. So we weren't going to stop in too many places heading south, but we did, one thing we did when we were in New York, we did spend a couple days into Pennsylvania and visit Hershey Park. And I was amazed. I had heard about Hershey Park, you know, being a amusement park, but I had never heard the story of Hershey Park. And I was fascinated by that Milton Hershey built the park, you know, started the park for his workers to have, you know, some free time that they could spend at this amusement park. So I thought that story was such a powerful story, and you know, Milton Hershey's story. So I love that. Besides the amusement park, you know, the grandkids really love that. And Charles used to go to Hershey Park with his daughter, so now he was there with her and the kids. So that was super special. From there we headed down and stayed in an RV park just like 2 nights in South Jersey. And then we headed into DC, and we planned it before the election. We wanted to be in DC and explore the city. Years ago we had overnighted one night into DC and we loved it. So we booked for a week just outside of DC, and I loved the RV park we stayed into. It was called like Cherry Hill RV Park. They had a bus, a shuttle bus that would pick you up right in the park, take you to the train station. You could take the train right into the heart of DC. So it made it so easy to go explore the city. So we did that. We explored DC, went to the Capitol building. We didn't go in the Capitol building, but we were outside, and we just explored DC a week before election there. And one thing we did in DC that we didn't know about before was we visited the Museum of the Bible. And I'm going to have a separate video onto that, because that was such a nice experience. If you are, you know, Christian, you're into the DC area, that is something that you should do. Museum of the Bible. We saw on social media, we had never heard about it before, but I'm happy we took the day to spend there because it was absolutely beautiful. We enjoyed it so much, and we will have a video. From DC we headed down just through Virginia. We just spent a few nights into Fayetteville. I have a friend who lives in Fayetteville, so when we're tracking up or down, if we're passing somewhere where we have friends and family, we always like to stay and plan a visit and catch up. So that was really nice. We spent a few nights into South Carolina, also a nice place onto a lake. And then we stayed in one of our favorite spots on the way down is Savannah. We love Savannah. We love the city of Savannah. We love going downtown, the restaurants, the food, because New Orleans was one of our favorite states because of the food. And Savannah has the New Orleans influence in their food, and we love spending time in Savannah. My son and his wife came up and explored with us. So we enjoyed Savannah onto the way down. And then our first stop into Florida was St. Augustine. St. Augustine is another one of our favorites, the oldest city in America. So if you haven't visited St. Augustine, you should put that on your list as well. We discovered a new park this time. It was conveniently located to the highway. It was a new park, but it wasn't far from town. It was like maybe 15 minutes to downtown, or even less than that, into downtown St. Augustine. But for the RV, it was easy in and out of the highway. Literally, we drove right back onto the highway. But we were set far enough that you didn't hear the road noise. So that was a good place if you're going, north or south. This was a good park into St. Augustine. From St. Augustine, we headed to Clermont. Now, our plan is no matter where we go in the summer, we always come back to the Orlando area to spend Thanksgiving with my mother-in-law. And we did that. We spent 2 weeks. Unfortunately, this was a different Thanksgiving this time because she had fallen. She was in rehab for her fall. From rehab, she was in and out to the hospital. So we end up spending Thanksgiving in the rehab with her. But we're grateful for the time that we spent with her. So we were there. We spent those 2 weeks into Orlando. And then December, I always book a park into Port St. Lucie, our favorite park, PSL RV Village, right in the heart of Port St. Lucie. We book it a year in advance to get here. So I had booked this park, December before, to be able to spend December here. So that's pretty much a year in review. We got back to Port St. Lucie, and we come back to Port St. Lucie to be able to spend Christmas. My family is in Port St. Lucie, and my hubby's family is in Fort Lauderdale. So this is a good central location. All our friends are into the area. So, and plus my work, the end of the year, the last quarters of the year, I am swamped with work. So although we're traveling all the time, I'm working, all day. And December especially is a brutal month for work. So I like to be just parked up somewhere that I can, spend my days working. At night, we catch up with friends and family. And what I did this year to end the year for myself was I went home to Saba and I spent Christmas with my son and his family. Originally, my honey and I were going to go like the first 2 weeks in January. We were going to go and spend New Year's there. But with his mom, being in a delicate state, in and out of the hospital. And so he decided he would stay here, spend Christmas with his boys, and I would go to the Caribbean and spend Christmas with my family there. And although we were separated, we both enjoyed it. I was happy to be in the Caribbean. My little grandson couldn't even remember the last time I was there for Christmas. And it was like an old-fashioned Christmas for me. It was really, really wonderful. I have a video on that just a couple weeks ago, so you can check that out as well if you want to spend Christmas into the Caribbean. So this was our year in review. Leave us a comment and tell us a little bit about your year, or if you have a video, if you're on social media, how we can check out your year in review. But I also wanted to give you the numbers onto like how much a road trip. Now I did have to make some notes because so we did our summer road trip was like a 6-month road trip. Our average cost per month for rent was between $1,500 to $2,000. It depended on the months, the state we were in, and so New York was $900 for the month, so that evened out if we were paying a little bit more somewhere else. But that was, you could say, average about $1,800 a month for rent. Now, fuel for the RV, we drove 5,000 miles onto the RV, and we get like 8 miles to a gallon. A gallon of diesel averages about $4. Some places more, some places less. So we spend on the 6-month road trip about $2,500 into fuel. So just think about if you were going on to a 6-month trip somewhere traveling with airline tickets and whatnot, you know, how much would it cost? It would cost a lot more than that. So traveling in the RV allows us to explore and see so many places, much less expensive than any other way of traveling. So I wanted to share that with you. If you're not an RVer, if you're thinking about RVing, you know, exploring, doing something different, you can do it very affordably. I mean, our food is the same whether we're in Florida or whatever state we're in. You know, we keep it in balance. We cook because we carry our house with us, and wherever we park up, we can cook, you know, that night. And you know, we go out to restaurants, but we keep that in balance. Excursions, we go on a lot of nature places. You know, I love the national parks, and those are very affordable. Any nature place is very affordable. I visited Acadia National Park a few days. Now we have the lifetime membership, so you know, it's free to get in. You buy drinks, snacks, souvenir. The most souvenirs we buy are magnets for our fridge. That is what we bring back with us. Soon our fridge will be too heavy for them. We have so many. But that is kind of like what our summer road trip cost us. So think about it. That's very affordable to travel in an RV this way. So I wanted to share our 2024 year in review. And stay tuned next week because we have some exciting news to share with you, because we are making huge changes in our 2025, and I'm dying to share it with you. I think I shared with you before that I like to share good news. I don't like bad news in drama. So I will share next week our 2025 plans, changes to our channel, changes to our lifestyle. So stay tuned, and thank you guys for hanging till the end. Thank you always for your support, watching our videos. Don't forget, if you like this video, give us a thumbs up, share with a friend. If you haven't subscribed already, do so right now, because subscribing in 2025 is free. Hit that notification bell so that you won't miss our videos, and head on over to our channel because we have over 300 videos. We will see you next week.